following program is a production of Ho'ike Kauaʻi Community Media.
Aloha and welcome to Talkin Trash. I'm Max Richardson.
And I'm Allison Fraley.
And today, we've got a special guest. That's right, our first ever guest on Talkin Trash, Shannon Hiramoto.
And we're going to talk about upcycling and the Boroboro Boutique.
But before we jump in, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and follow Ho'ike on YouTube or on your podcatcher of choice. Stay informed, stay connected, and enjoy the stories that make Kauaʻi special.
So Shannon, it's really great to have you here today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background?
Sure. My name's Shannon Hiramoto. I'm from the island of Kauaʻi, born and raised. And most people know me as Machine Machine. That's my company's name, and I've been doing it for 18 years in Hawaii. Primarily, I sew and make art and do a lot of wearable art, one-of-a-kind clothing, non-mass produced, and that's my business.
That's great. So I understand that what your business is called upcycling. Can you tell us a little bit about upcycling?
Sure. Upcycling is something I'm super passionate about. It's been a big part of how I make things since I started sewing. Way back when I was 14 years old. And it basically entails taking something that you already own or something secondhand and then transforming it through creativity into a whole new product. And you can do it for clothing or you could do it for all kinds of things. And it's now it's very common. Now it's a thing that most people are familiar with.
Yeah, well, that's totally up my alley. Mm-hmm. I wonder, how did you get inspired to start this? Was there something that happened that made you want to do upcycling?
Yeah, I feel that it was because when I was a teenager here on the island, we didn't have a lot of shopping resources. There was Liberty House and there were a couple of surf shops, and this was pre-internet. And so there were not a lot of options for wanting to dress the way I wanted to dress. And so we would do a lot of thrift store shopping. Mm-hmm. And it was really fun just to wear clothes from the thrift store, but even more fun to then take those clothing and transform them into things that were more customized. Yeah. So my grandma taught me how to sew, and together we were upcycling before we knew there was a word for it. And it was a really fun way to express ourselves, me and my friends, and also it was pretty much like the peak of creativity because you were forced to work with materials that you just found rather than materials that you were able to select from a whole array of fabrics at the fabric store. Yeah. So I really enjoyed how that was a creative exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to ask, what inspired the name Machine Machine?
Yeah, there's a couple answers. So one is really nerdy, and it was based on a short story that I read in college that I really liked called The Machine Stops, which is an E.M. Forster short story, and it was written in 1904. And it was very prescient and talked a lot about this future dystopia where we had ruined the environment and lost track of how to make things by ourselves and have firsthand experiences. And the story just really struck me as a cautionary tale. And in that short story, the machine that runs everything stops, and what happens when we've relied too much on technology and to our detriment. And so my first Etsy store was called The Machine Stops, and it was just a fun thing I was doing. I didn't think it was going to turn into a business. This was way back in 2007. But then when I decided to turn it into an actual business, I thought I would make the wording a little more playful. And so Machine Machine was a playful way to rebrand. And I always use my sewing machine, my normal straight stitch, and then my serger. So I go between the two machines.
Between machine and machine, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And wow, yeah, that short story comes more relevant each year.
Yes.
So.
Oh, yeah. You should really look into it because it kind of... what would we say? It predicts the internet and predicts this. There's a blue screen that everyone stares into and talks to people and communicates, and they listen to basically podcasts all day long in their little hive cells, and they can't go outside because they've killed the environment.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to read that because I'd be reading it and I'd be thinking, how did this guy in 1904 know about my life? Like, how could he see what I was doing when I wasn't even born yet?
Yeah, it sounds like that was an inspiration as well, though, kind of, huh?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It was, the class I was taking at the time was a literature and technology class. And so everything we read was just really impactful to me at that moment, in college, and just absorbing that. But in particular, that story stuck with me.
Yeah. So we touched on it a little bit already, but what is Boroboro Boutique?
All right. Yes. So I've been doing machine for a while. And then in 2020, during COVID, I actually got more involved in community arts because business slowed down and I had more time in my life. And so I reconnected with my high school art teacher, Carol Yotsuda, and she used to teach at Kauaʻi High, and she runs the Garden Island Arts Council. She's been running that since 1977. And I've always wanted to reconnect with her. She's such a legend and an icon here on the island for creativity. And so I did. I started volunteering with the organization and joined the board. And we started doing a lot of things, but one thing was sewing. And I started a garage sale idea, and we made a bunch of things to sell at the garage sale. Her and me and a bunch of other volunteer ladies from the Arts Council. And that was the beginning of it. Carol had a lot of old fabric, and so we used her old fabric and we created hoppy coats and blouses, and everything was mixed up, different fabrics, because we're using whatever we could find. And we used the name Boroboro because Boroboro means rags in Japanese, and it's a way to talk about clothing that is just patched together. And it seemed very appropriate. In Hawaii, we grew up saying Boroboro. Your Boroboro clothes are like your play clothes or the clothes you wear outside. They're just your clothes that you're gonna wear them till they shred, and then you're gonna patch them and keep wearing them.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. And it just happens to be alliterative too, and with boutique. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
And then I think there's this thing about repeating words. So machine, Boroboro. It sounds good. It feels good.
Yeah. There's a name for that rule. I forget what it's called, but there's a name for it.
It's big in Hawaiian too, right? When you really want to emphasize a word, you say it twice.
Yeah, like vai.
Yeah.
All right. So we talk a lot about clothing. I know we've actually had you in the studio before on another one of our shows, the Hawaii Weekly, to talk about upcycling clothing. I know that's usually what we're talking about when we're talking about upcycling, but is that the only thing you can upcycle, or is there other stuff too?
Oh, definitely other stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of artists and creative people that do all sorts of upcycling. There's people who take apart, bicycles and car parts and then transform them into sculptures and things like that. Yeah. Practically speaking, I think there is things you could upcycle and not just create art, but create utilitarian things. But yeah, my lane is pretty much sewing. So mostly it's clothing and accessories that I do.
Okay, that makes sense. And actually, now that you mention it, my car is from 1995, so sometimes I upcycle parts from other cars. It's hard to find parts for it. So.
Yeah, and I've seen upcycled bags made from animal feed bags into bags that you could use to take to the store, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, those are, I've seen, I think we talked about those on the last episode, did we? Or I was talking about that with somebody.
We gave a grant to an organization that did that. It was like a farm, and then they sewed, grocery bags from these feed bags. It's just an example.
Yeah, you use what you have, right? And what's at your disposal for whatever business organization you're with. I think another big upcycling trend is for houses and furniture. So a lot of people have houses that they deconstruct, especially here in Hawaii. And then you've got these cool old vintage windows and doors and hardware. And then you bring it to the Habitat Restore and they resell it. And then you can use those products in a new build or something. And then that is basically upcycling.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah. So would you say there's certain fabrics or materials that are easier to upcycle or harder to upcycle? Are there maybe garments that come through your door to be processed that you see it and you go, oh man.
Yes, for sure. Just in general, some fabric is a lot more friendly to a sewing machine, and some are just more difficult and challenging. So we all love things that are easy to sew, like cotton and linen. They also feel good on the body. A lot of times we're doing things like back here, you can see a garment that we actually painted on. One of our volunteers, Bon Moore, she did that. And of course, you want a nice linen or cotton that will absorb the paint. We also do indigo dyeing, which prefers a natural fiber versus a synthetic to absorb the indigo. And so, yeah, that does help when it's more of a natural fiber, but I like polyesters as well because they are funky and they have bright colors, and sometimes they flow well on the body. So those things are things to consider when we're taking things apart. I do also like to sew with plastic. So it's an alternative product, like you're talking about.
What kind of plastic?
Well, you were talking about the feed bags.
Yeah.
And so what I'd like to do is sew with rice bags, like the plastic rice bags. There was a food truck back in my old location where I was working out of. It was Kauaʻi before they were a restaurant, and they would give me all of their rice bags. And they were really big and they're really cute because they were kokeshi rice bags. They had the little kokeshi dolls on them. And so I would turn those into tote bags and wallets and all sorts of things. And then people found out about that, and organizations like the National Tropical Botanical Garden, the County of Kauaʻi, Rice Street Business Association, went through their old banners, like their old vinyl signage, and they gave those to me. And so I've gone through a lot of vinyl banner material as well, creating bags and different products. And that's really fun because it's very durable. Yeah. And there's definitely more life that you can get out of a banner. But a lot of times banners have information on them that's outdated, so you can't reuse them as a banner. Yeah. So I do like the banners. They're really hard to work with. So I figured out how to sew with them, what machines to use and needles. And when you make a bag out of something so stiff, you have to inside it out. And that's, it's hard on the hands, but it feels good when it's done. So I love it.
So when you're doing like the plastic rice bags or feed bags, what kind of needle do you use? Because I go through every couple months, I go through a bag of chicken feed, and I could be making those.
Yeah.
Making those into
it just depends on the thickness. And so a lot of times you might want to use more of like a denim or a leather needle.
Okay.
And then also the bag can be kind of sticky, not necessarily like, because it was like gluey, but more just it's not smooth like fabric, and so it sticks to the machine or the foot. So you'll want to get like a Teflon pedal or a pedal that allows for like gliding through the presser foot. And these are all things that I've learned through trial and error and a lot of frustration.
Yeah.
And we have the internet
Broken
now
needles.
too. So like a lot of people have tutorials and good things to find on the internet for sure.
So nice.
Yeah. I had, not anywhere near the level that you're at, but I do some sewing for theater and stuff. And I had just like a really thick seam. It was like a seam on top of a seam of like a thicker fabric. And I had the needle just shatter on me. And it like the piece of the needle came up and hit me right here.
Yeah.
Gosh.
And I was like, I think I've learned that every time I change fabrics, I'm going to double check what needle I have attached.
Yeah, it's scary. I've had that experience a lot.
Yeah.
So sometimes I do wear safety
I was going to ask,
glasses.
do you wear safety glasses?
Just reading glasses, I wear those.
Yeah.
And, you should be changing your needles pretty frequently. They say every 10 hours of sewing, which goes by really quickly. But I usually wait until it starts sewing funky, and then I'm like, I guess I better change my needle. But technically, you're supposed to change them really often.
Yeah, I should probably keep better track of that.
Sewing's hardcore. Yeah, it's gnarly.
Yeah,
you can't do it, man.
It's dangerous.
Yeah, I was like, man, maybe I should be wearing glasses for this. And I was like, it's not a lathe, it's a sewing machine. Oh, close call. All right. So can you maybe walk us through your process a little bit when you are upcycling an item?
Right. And so item will find its way to me, or I go hunting at a thrift store or garage sale and I find something very interesting. And basically, like for instance, I brought some of our raw materials here.
Okay.
So
let's see.
These are, if you go to the bond dances on the island in the summertime, you give a little donation and you get a towel. So it's called a tenugui, and it's a cotton towel. They're usually made in Japan, but custom for the temples here.
Okay.
And they're white. They're white cotton, and they're beautiful, and you wear them and you dance with them, and they're an all-purpose Japanese item. Now we take them and we're like, well, we can make clothing out of them. So the item that you find, the raw material, it dictates what it wants to be sometimes, and it takes experimentation to get there. So for these, we wanted to elevate them, so we dyed them. And so they really look different once you...
So this was formerly white.
It was just bright white.
And with the printing and everything and these stripes, but the background was white.
Yes.
Okay.
And sometimes we find them and they're old. People will give us their ones they've collected. And so dyeing them also hides the blemishes.
Yeah.
And they're so beautiful.
Oh, they are
and they're really
cool.
great because they usually are about Hawaii. And so it's really fun to create garments that are place specific.
And then you said they're multi-purpose. Before you use them, what do people use them as scarves or like decorations around their homes? Or
After the bond dance, you can use them just as like
Towel
a handkerchief.
yeah.
And so if you're in the garden, you
there
just
you
have
go.
this and you can wipe your
nice.
forehead. You just use it like a little dish rag. But it is also just like a sentimental, nostalgic thing to have to remember that specific year or temple. And, we have a lot that we've collected from different people around the island, and these temples maybe no longer exist or they no longer do their bond dances. And so it's really sentimental to get them and be like, oh, they don't even do a bond dance anymore.
So what would you make out of this?
So like a garment that I'm wearing now, basically.
Oh my gosh.
And so we've tried to retain
That is
a
so
majority
cool.
of the imagery because it's so special.
Oh.
And my Japanese is
that.
pretty rusty, but I'm pretty sure it says like the locations on the island and bond dance. And usually it says like, let's bond dance. And so, creating garments where that's a focal point is one of the things we like to do.
And then on the back, I'm sorry, I don't even know.
Yeah, so the back, can you see?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh
same
my
thing,
gosh,
different.
really cute,
Yeah.
super cute.
So everything's one of a kind, which is really special for our customers. And they love either bringing things to us to repurpose, or we just have our collection of things.
That is so cool. And I didn't notice when you had your arms down, but the cut on this is really unique too. It's just like a big rectangle, but it drapes nicely.
Yeah,
it looks
looks
like a
good
shirt
on
when
you,
you're wearing
yeah.
it.
Yeah, this is kind of a style now that's really popular.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, what's popular these days at your boutique?
So we like to create items that can be worn by a variety of body types. And so we want clothing that's inclusive and that people also don't have to feel like they need to try on in that moment. A lot of times we're selling things at like a market or outdoor
dressing
public.
room.
Yeah, so we just want them to be able to either throw it right on without needing a mirror or just assume it's going to fit.
Yeah.
And so clothing that is flexible in that way is, I think, attractive to people.
Well, it's certainly attractive to me. Yeah. Do you guys have any men's clothing, or is it mostly just women's stuff?
Mostly women's things.
Okay.
Yeah. A couple of men have purchased our tops even. We have, different cuts of the same thing.
Yeah.
And they like it. Men's clothing seems to take a little more tailoring, a collar and buttons. And I don't want to generalize, but men, not you, because you like color, but a lot of them really just want plain and not so loud. Yeah.
That's true. I had a guy call me out at the mall yesterday. I was just walking, trying to get lunch, and he was like, "Nice hair, bro." And I was like, "Thanks." And he's like, "Aren't you a little old for that?" And I was like,
Oh, geez.
"Have a good day."
No, I would like to see everyone expressing themselves with whatever makes them happy. Like, I think that's something that we can, as makers, offer the world as a way to self-express.
Yeah.
And so I encourage that a lot.
Yeah, well, and it's working out. This is a cool shirt. Yeah. These are great garments here, and I can't wait to see what you do with this stuff.
Yeah, so these are boutiques that Carol Yatsuda has made, and these are old. She made these in maybe the 80s or 90s, and batik is a really fun way to create surface design. So you do a wax resist, and then you use paint, and you do layers of painting and wax resisting to create just a really dynamic look.
So these were some of the things that Carol gave you when you guys started working together?
Yeah, we have a box of these at the studio, and sometimes we don't want to use them because they're so precious.
Right, yeah.
And she won't ever do these again. And we've done this as a group. So another part of the Boroboro Boutique sewing group is we do occasionally do workshops where we get together and we do things like batik, indigo dyeing. We also do printmaking on fabric. And so we do like to zhuzh up the plain fabric that we have. And it's really fun. You know, the thing about Boroboro, it's not just about what we create. It's not just about the environmental part of it. It's about getting together as a community and socializing and doing things in group. And I think that's like a big part of a healthy community is creativity together.
Do you ever work with people who maybe have never sewn before, like me, or, you know, maybe aren't as artistically inclined to like teach them? Or is it more about people that really have the skills?
Nope. Yep.
Yeah.
We like all. So if you don't know how to sew, maybe you want to join us for one of our more creative outlets like the fabric design. Yeah. But also there are simple things to sew, like a tote bag that is good for a novice. Learn. Yes. We're not really doing sewing workshops.
Yeah.
So it's more like people would pop in on one of our sewing days and just dive in. Yeah. And we'll just be like, I wouldn't do that if I were you, or try that.
Oh, cool.
But we're not hovering and we're not teaching. We're just there to all have fun together.
That's great.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Maybe I'll have to come down there and make my own upcycled men's clothing.
Yeah, it's really
there
fun.
you go.
I mean, I am sewing for my business all the time, and it can be really lonely. Like I'm there by myself with my machines and usually a podcast going on or something, but I craved sewing with other people and learning, and my grandma taught me to sew, and so being around all these other women who a lot of them are older than I am, it just really satisfies like that part of what I love.
Yeah. The only thing more fun than doing something you enjoy is doing it with someone else.
So having been in the industry of recycling for so long, I've attended several trashion shows, like a fashion show made out of trash. Well, it's not trash, of course. It's their items that can be reused. But have you ever done anything like that or been to one of those? Because you can see some really, fashion, you see some crazy stuff, you know. Do you have any experience with that?
Well, once, this was pre-Boroboro Boutique, but it was part of my company and also other companies on the islands that were involved in the fashion industry. We created a fashion experience called Style Hack. And this was way back in 2014. And we basically mentored preteens and teens on how to put together a fashion show, but also creating the garments. And so everything was donated by Salvation Army. And we taught them how to sew. They created their own garments. It was like a whirlwind of creativity. They also then learned how to model, how to take photos, how to create the fashion show. And then there was a big
did you do it at Kauaʻi Grove?
It was actually done at KCC during a Love Life program, which was a dance and music festival that used to happen. And so the kids did their style hack there. It was really cool.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, that sounds really cool. Okay, I've got a follow-up question for that then. Is there any interest on your part of doing something like that again and perhaps televising it?
I think it's always a great idea. Yeah. And I like it when it's very specific. So when I think about doing something like that, I think let's make it really talk to one issue. I think back in 2014, it was good just to do something like all around upcycling. But nowadays, I think it really should address like a specific
maybe plastic.
Need. Yeah, plastic or paper. And really elevating it. So not just sewing bags together, but transforming, really transforming the materials.
That would be good. Andy, our recycling coordinator, was when I said I was coming on the show with you, he was like, "Ooh, maybe we could do the trash and show," And it'd be. I'll pull some information and share it with you so we could start maybe formulating something.
Yeah. That would be.
And just a little plug for something I did back in 2024 in January. There was the Kauaʻi Historical Society had a big fundraiser paina. It was called the Mu'umu'u Paina. And the Garden Island Arts Council teamed up and we presented the fashion show side of that. And it was a Mu'umu'u design and sewing contest. Different categories of mu'umu'u, but one category was an avant-garde category. And some of the contestants did do upcycling for their mu'umu'us, which if you can imagine how exciting and interesting that was.
The sleeves were fun and all kinds of stuff.
It was pretty incredible.
Yeah. Is there, can I see videos or pictures of this anywhere? Is there someplace I can,
There is,
I'm interested to see what that was like.
You can check it out on social media, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
So I hear tell that you've got a Boroboro Boutique pop-up coming up in the future. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
For sure. Yes, we did it last year. And so we're going to do it again by popular demand. And it is a 3-day Boroboro Boutique pop-up shop and craftathon. So it's really fun. We took over the Kauaʻi Society of Artists Gallery at Kukui Grove Shopping Center. For 3 days, we set up our sewing studio and a little shop. And throughout the 3 days, we had different demonstrations, art stations, and workshops. And everything was basically about crafting and sewing and making things. So we're going to do that again this year.
Great.
This year, we're really going to focus in on the upcycling aspect of it. So every demo and workshop will be focused on repurposing.
That's great.
Yeah.
Can you tell us when it's going to be?
It's going to be Memorial Day weekend. So that would be May 24th, 25th, and 26th. And it's from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Oh, man, I'm going.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
I'm going to come down there.
We have a website. It's called handmadekauaʻi.com. And we'll have the full schedule there and all the details.
Okay. And links to that website are, if you're watching this as a video, they'll be hopefully on the bottom of your screen right now. And if you're listening to the podcast version, I'll make sure to put those links in the show notes down below the podcast. So have a look at their website if you'd like to. Okay. So I'm sure I always try to, when I do this show, I always try to channel the cynic out there. And so I'm sure someone watching this is thinking like, what does it matter if cloth goes into the landfill instead of being reused? Because it's organic, isn't it going to break down anyway? So I'm sure you have an answer for this too. What do you say to that person that's thinking that right now?
Well, from my research, it takes 200 years for a piece of fabric or clothing to break down in a landfill. And what I learned from a previous episode of Talkin Trash was that because of the way the landfill is set up and the layering of the trash, it actually prevents true decomposition from happening in a quick manner anyway. And so it won't decompose, even if it's cotton or silk or linen. Yeah. It still will sit in the landfill for possibly hundreds of years. And then more trash just gets piled on it, and it just adds to the trash problem.
Yeah, and also it's a resource. It's something that can be repurposed and enjoyed again. And so why throw it in the landfill if you can make a beautiful garment out of it? Yeah.
Yes.
Clothes are expensive.
Clothes are expensive, but also clothes are really cheap.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
And so we're part of the movement called slow fashion, right? We're about making things by hand, and that's a slow process, but also it's slow because we're slowing down the speed of the fashion industry, which is out of control fast. Yeah. And so fast fashion basically is the industry where things are created just to sell more. And so it's cheap, it's made cheaply. And the consequences of that is that like the labor practices are really unethical. The way that the factories are run are very environmentally damaging. And a lot of times they don't happen in our country. So it's like we don't think about it. Yep. But then when it does hit our country, it goes to the landfill. Yep. And so it's just an unsustainable part of the fashion industry. So we are the alternative to that. And we're trying to get people to purchase things that, yes, it might cost a little bit more, but you're going to value that hopefully for the rest of your life. Hopefully it's a heritage piece that you'll pass on, especially if it's something that we make that's about Hawaii. It's about something that truly like speaks to the heart.
Yeah, cool. And that's what we call like a value-added product.
Yeah, it sounds like it's almost entirely upsides. It's something it's aesthetically pleasing. It's unique and expressive, and it prevents waste from going into the landfill and becoming an environmental problem. So it's good for the environment, it's good for your artistic soul, and it's good for your budget.
And I think it's just good for the community.
Yeah.
Like, I think that part of it, which is why we want to do this pop-up, is that it really brings people into the action. And yes, I understand we're not going to change the crisis of the landfill because of this. We're not going to change the environment because of our little project, but we will plant a seed in the habits and the minds and the hearts of other people and hopefully inspire them. And then that has that ripple effect.
Yeah. And it's like every little bit helps too, right? Because what is an ocean but a multitude of drops, you know? So if you're doing a small part and everyone else is doing a small part, that part becomes big, you know, kind of just like if I throw one plastic bottle in the garbage and everyone else throws one plastic bottle in the garbage, that's 70,000 plastic bottles.
Yeah. So thanks so much for coming on the show. It was really great to learn about what you're doing, and I'm going to be going to that pop-up, but also I want to visit your boutique too to see what's there, you know.
I want to swing by and check it out.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love this podcast, love this show.
Yeah, I'm so glad. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
It made me so happy when you said, "Oh, I watched the episodes," and I was like, "Oh, wow, yay!"
No, I learned a lot. I think it's such a valuable thing that you guys are creating, and I just want to spread the word.
Cool.
Thanks, Shannon.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, that's our show.
So tune in next month. We're going to talk about more ways to keep waste out of the landfill.
And as always, you can send me an email if you have any questions you want us to answer here on the show. My email address is down below. Shannon, thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time,
Aloha.
Ho'ike Kauaʻi Community Media's president and CEO is Allegra Gaines. Administrative assistant, Leiko Someda. Production and education services by Roger Olson. Production and IT services by Max Richardson. News and events producer, Trisha Allen. County producer and social media manager, Olivia Franco.